Jeremy Corbyn has accused Keir Starmer of attack on democracy after he was blocked from standing as a Labour candidate at the next election. Starmer's confirmed that he won't be able to stand. Of course, just as a reminder, Islington North is his seat. Aaron, let me pick up with you on this. Do you back Starmer? Do you think it's right to block Corbyn?
No, and I think the framing here from Jeremy Corbyn is entirely correct. He is still, just to let your audience know this, he's still a Labour Party member. I think that's not often communicated enough. So he's not been suspended from the Labour Party. He's lost the whip as a Member of Parliament. Keir Starmer said when seeking the leadership in the Labour Party in 2020 that he would end the imposition by the Labour Party NEC of candidates. And guess what he's doing right now? He'll be imposing an NEC-backed candidate in Islington. And I think, for me, it's reminiscent of his position on Brexit. Keir Starmer and people like him within the permanent political class, when something doesn't go their way, or they don't like something, they say, you know what, the little people don't matter. We'll just ride roughshod over them. And I think this is the same thing. And it doesn't matter whether it's Jeremy Corbyn or somebody else. The Labour leadership across the country right now is fixing long lists, basically, to exclude certain people from being able to run from various parts of the party. And it's outrageous. And I can sit here as somebody who's on the left and say, frankly, the Conservative Party, with its candidates, is more democratic than the Labour Party. It's extraordinary. And we hear from people like Keir Starmer, well, if I become the Prime Minister, I'll redistribute power or will give power away. Well, if you're rigging shortlists and long lists, how are you going to be giving power away? It's my main criticism, actually, of the House of Lords reform. You know, I'd love to see an elected House of Lords, but realistically, if it's all lackeys and water carriers that the Labour leader wants, then what's the point? And I think this is of a piece with that. So he's absolutely right. This is not what party leaders should be doing. It's for constituents and party members to decide who their representatives are, not Keir Starmer.
Charlotte?
I think there are several questions I'd have, and I don't know the ins and outs of kind of Labour selection processes and candidate allocations, and Aaron's spelled out obviously why, you know, you do want party members to be able to have a real say in who their representative is in Parliament. But I do have, I guess, a couple of observations, maybe. So, one, I don't really understand how you could, if, you know, I think we could all agree that if Jeremy Corbyn stands as a Labour candidate, he's probably going to get elected, but then he can't be a Labour MP because he doesn't have the whip. So I don't really understand how you can stand as a Labour candidate, but then you couldn't be a Labour MP, which is essentially, in my basic reading of this, the position. So that sort of seems rather absurd to me. I don't really see how it's anti-democratic because, you know, we as citizens have a right to vote for a candidate. Jeremy Corbyn has the right to stand as an independent. Therefore, the people in Islington can elect him as an independent. So I'm not really sure why it's anti-democratic in a kind of bigger sense. But also more fundamentally, for the Labour Party, you know, this really isn't a local candidate issue. You know, just kind of being realistic here, right? Jeremy Corbyn is a massive national figure and comes with a whole load of baggage. Whatever you think about him, whatever your viewers think about him, he comes with a lot of baggage. And most of the analysis post the 2019 election, which he lost, I mean, miserably for the Labour Party, massive Conservative landslide, most of that analysis post-election identified Corbyn as being one of the biggest factors that turned people away from the Labour Party.
But locally, in his seat, he's hugely popular.
He is, but the problem that Keir Starmer has as the leader of the Labour Party is that he is trying to position the Labour Party nationally as a credible, electable party to govern the country. And so this is where I don't think you can split the local and the national. Corbyn is a national figure. He comes with a lot of national baggage. He doesn't have the Labour whip.
I just think it's anti-Semitic.
Well, I mean, I couldn't possibly judge that, but he certainly the Labour Party institutionally was deemed anti-Semitic, and we've just heard, was it this week, I think, that Labour has come out of special measures, which the Equality and Human Rights Commission put them in, because they said they found unlawful behaviour and huge failings in the way that the party had, under Corbyn, dealt or not dealt with cases of anti-Semitism or allegations of anti-Semitism. So I don't know, because I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I've not experienced, obviously, any anti-Semitism as a result of it. But certainly the EHRC, to be put in special measures because you've been discriminatory is a pretty big deal under Corbyn's watch.
One of my viewers, Peter, just got in touch saying, Michelle, since when does the tail wag the dog? It is up to a political party to choose its MPs based on suitability and in accordance with Labour's core views. Corbyn is not entitled to a free election ticket. He could stand as an independent like many others if he wanted to.
Well, I'm sure he will, but the point is he's a Labour member, so he's not been expelled from the party. If he'd been expelled from the party, this is an entirely different conversation. To get on to the points made about...
Do you think it's right that he's allowed to be a Labour Party member?
He's been allowed in. There's been a submission of evidence for and against, and a panel, which, by the way, I think they're actually Starmer loyalists, let him back in. And I think at the time the leadership was quite angry about it. So, you know, I believe in due process. They've seen arguments for and against that I've not been privy to, so I don't know. In terms of him not being able to stand because of 2019, well, Labour got 32% in 2019. They got 30% in 2015 under Ed Miliband. Does that mean Ed Miliband should have been blocked from running again? Or Gordon Brown after 20... Gordon Brown got 29.5%. So that seems a very unfair argument.
And you're absolutely right, and that's a perfectly reasonable argument to make. And obviously there's all sorts of complications around, you know, the fact that you can increase massively the amount of the vote and still not get... You know, I mean, this is the whole debate around our electoral system. My point was more that if you looked at what... And this is a purely political point, right? If you're Keir Starmer trying to get into government at the next election, this is not about, you know, whether this is morally the right thing or democratically the right thing. But if you're Keir Starmer as the leader of the Labour Party and you have evidence that Corbyn was a big factor in people moving away from your party. You know, most of the polling seems to show, or the analysis of the polling seems to show, he was the biggest factor.
No, it was Brexit. Which, by the way...
No, YouGov polling clearly showed that and you're right, there'll be lots of polls, but let's just say he was top two.
I know what GBNews viewers will think, and it's Brexit. And this is the thing that the media can't talk about.
It was both.
It was Brexit, and Keir Starmer was
both. That's just not the evidence points to Corbyn being a massive factor.
Of course he was, but no, we know this, the primary reason was Brexit. And the reason we know this is because there was a party called the Brexit Party, and when it didn't run, that's what sealed the deal. It's not that, you know, in political... Let me just finish.
Sure, go ahead.
Because in political punditry, we love to make these things so complicated. It was called the Brexit election. Labour on the wrong side of 400 constituencies which voted leave because this genius Keir Starmer wanted to subvert the party policy so he could become leader. And he has. But let's not say Brexit didn't play a role in 2019. It was all Jeremy Corbyn. It was about Brexit.
I didn't say
you said it was the number one thing. It wasn't.
Corbyn,
it was
if you look at some of the analysis, so for example, as I say, YouGov, who analysed the people who swung from Labour to Conservative, the number one factor was Corbyn. And second was Brexit, absolutely. I'm not for one moment suggesting that Brexit wasn't a big issue. And actually Corbyn's sort of, you know, vagueness on the subject, I think probably was also a factor. But it was also just people didn't believe what he was saying. The anti-Semitism allegations played a big role. You know, people reported on the doors, you know, as in people knocking on doors, reported people saying, I don't like Corbyn. I don't want Corbyn.
Give some strong anecdotal evidence to this because I ran in the 2019 election for the Brexit Party. So I was one of the people knocking on those doors. And it was traditionally a Labour town and city seat, right? And so many people told me, I've always voted Labour all my life, but I don't like Corbyn. But moving on from that, one of the things that I found interesting, Corbyn put a statement out today on his Twitter account, etc. And I saw a really interesting comment in response to one of these. And he was saying, what's going on with Corbyn now is one of the biggest cases of institutional bullying played out on a public stage. And I thought that was quite interesting. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. This man has been hung out to dry. You don't have to like him. I think he made many mistakes as a political leader. You know, I like winners. He didn't win. But the reality is, the way he's treated by some of his colleagues is just appalling. And I have to say, Michelle, you know, I know that you come from a Labour background. I talk to Conservatives, I talk to people on the centre-left, I talk to people on the left. The nastiest people in politics in this country are on the centre/centre-left. The nastiest people. And they are guilty of bullying, and it's not just towards Jeremy Corbyn.
I can tell you, I was...
And I'm the guy on the left, by the way.
I was brought up Labour, in a Labour place. The thing that's turned me off Labour, more than anything, is the experience I had at the hands of Labour side of the fence when I was running for election. I thought it was grotesque, some of the stuff that I experienced. It put me off them for life. I'll have to do something special to pull my vote out the bag, that would be for sure.